my privilege to introduce you to Professor Elizabeth Kerekere, who's another person who kind of needs very little introduction in a room like this. Perhaps the only thing to introduce is that Leslynne's also not only good at the cheap stationery and cheap but hearty lunch, she's very good at finding money. So she found some Health Research Council money to fund Elizabeth to have a look at some of this work. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Kia ora, ngā mihi aroha, kia koutou katoa, e tautoko ana ngā mihi kua mihi a. Greetings to all the stayers in the room and to, nice work people, and to all of you watching online. Okay, ke te taho tōku pāpa, ko te whānau ākai, ko Ngāti Onione, ko te aitanga māhaki, ko rongo whakāta me ngai tamarihiri o kunei iwi. Ke te taho tōku mama, ko County Clare, me County Tipperary ki Airangi. I'm an activist at heart, and my background is in working for our whānau, particularly in suicide prevention, violence prevention, with a focus on young people and takatapo and rainbow people. I'm a strategist, project manager and a researcher, and I specialise in systemic change. Back in the day, I worked at Whangaia Ngā Pā Harakeke when we were based in Ngā Wairua, and every afternoon I went downstairs and what we called the hub. So Leslynne and we were there, Naumai, Lovey and Lyle came in from corrections, and it was at that 50 family stage you heard about earlier today. We would triage things happening for whānau, but we knew even then that that was not a sustainable model. A group of people in one room couldn't just look at one family at a time and go, what can we fix, what can we change, what can we make happen just for them? We have uringi now, but back then we were writing headings off for the spreadsheet. And Jane Wiley said earlier today that data is king, but back then it was like a little baby prince. And I was absolutely one of the cynics that Moira mentioned earlier on. I could see that the Vanguard method could work because this is the system that we're working on, so it makes sense that somebody from the UK will work on a system imported from the UK, but it didn't acknowledge the power of our whānau, the agency of our whānau, or where does our language and our culture fit into changing the system. Because the system is not neutral or benign. It's not just some messy bureaucratic thing that we have to fix or tidy up. It is the trappings that we inherit in a settler colonial society. It is racism, it is sexism, ageism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia baked into it. It is why Te Tairāwhiti sent down in force to be part of 100,000 people marching under the banner of Toitu Te Tiriti. Now, after my second campaign, I was elected to Parliament, and when that job came to an unexpected end, everyone asked me what was I going to do now, and my response is, I'm going to go and work with some people I like, people I actually respect. And then I get a call from Leslynne, and it's like, perfect, I'm going to be at home and do a project where I actually get to be based here. And so the project was approved before I got there, and it's a Ngā Kanohi Kitia project grant from the Health Research Council under the title of Kei Hea Te Komako e Koa, listening to whānau voices to cultivate whānau ora. Now the role of this research was to complete a thematic analysis of uringi, to do case studies of the whānau who were contained in that data, who contributed the data to uringi, and to conduct stakeholder consultation and develop a collaborative research report. So I had great pleasure of working with the Manaaki research team, which of course Leslynne as the program lead, the coaches, Lovey, Lane and Alofa, and our data analysts extraordinaire Debs. I interviewed 8 of the 11 kaiuringi employed at the time, plus 1 former, and shout out to the kaiuringi in the room, Rosie, Rochelle, Grace and Imogen. I also interviewed 5 of the 7 providers in place at that time, and that was CC Disability Action, Super Grands, who we just heard from, Matapuna, Oasis Community Shelter, and of course Trotac itself, and 1 agency representative. I tried to meet with more, but I got to meet with MSD, and that's just want to say, Sarah Wilson, you are a rock star. Now, I have enjoyed all of the kōrero here today, but the problem of going last is that many of the things I was going to cover have been already raised. Thanks a lot, Leslynne and Supergrands. But, however, I would like to shout out to Julie Fry, who I quoted extensively in my research report, and it's a real treat to have you here in person. So a quick recap for people. Manaaki Tairāwhiti, iwi-led place-based initiative endorsed by Cabinet in 2016 to provide regional leadership for improved outcomes for Whānau. Chaired by Ron Nepe, Chief Executive at Te Runanga o Turanganuiākiwa. The board includes regional leaders, staff from iwi community organisations and the council. The mayor sits at that table, alongside representatives from government agencies active in the social sector. So this collective response enables, and you've been hearing all day, about how it enables Manaaki Tairāwhiti to centre whānau voice, to reduce silos, explore options and collect evidence for alternative social sector service delivery to ensure that all whānau in Tairāwhiti are flourishing. And you've heard, there's 4 pau of the Tairāwhiti way of working: whānau engagement, collective understanding, collective response and review, and whānau flourishing. So, whānau engagement works because of the strong cultural, spiritual and emotional ties that the people engaged in this have to Te Tairāwhiti. They're committed, trusted and invested workforce because, as others have mentioned, most of them are from here. And not because they whakapapa directly, they've married into it. Evidence, my wife Alofa is one of the coaches in Manaaki. But the kaimahi are inherently connected to this place and therefore to the whānau that they're working with. We found that the whatever it takes approach is clearly applied across this model. And part of that is from rejecting arbitrary criteria and constraining how things are done, to openness of referrals, to gaining explicit consent. So as a speaker earlier mentioned, it's not about getting consent once, it's getting consent every time as you go through the process and making sure you're working alongside that whānau, because you might be there to help navigate, but you're not there to tell them what to do. And about capturing their voice, and so that it's the way they said it, not paraphrasing it, not putting into the little tick boxes that you've got and you've been asked to check on what they actually said and then what they mean by it, because that's not always obvious. Tino rangatiratanga and manumotu hake are woven through the Tairāwhiti way of working. It is key to why it works. Actually, the way we do it here, being Māori, using our cultural values, is why it works. And this is clearly articulated because of that importance of gaining that voice and that uringi database that holds all parts of that whānau journey. Because that's what upholds the mana of the whānau. Because while the kaiuringi are doing whatever it takes to get the best outcomes for them, they know that when they contribute information, they're not just doing it to get their needs met, they're doing it to change the system. That's what we promise them. Now, meeting whānau needs, of course, we know that sometimes that's complex and that's going to take time. Tairāwhiti way of working means they can take the time they need. We know that most of our contracts across all of our agencies do not allow that. And so it's a gift. It's a gift to have a kaiuringi inside an organisation that enables them to work in that broad way. They might want to, and they can't. But as you heard today from Sarah, that actually having someone there opens your eyes to say, oh, well, actually, we could do things differently. Still within our contracts, still within our deliverables, but we can tweak how we do things to be more open, to be closer towards and contribute to that Tairāwhiti way of working. The collective understanding works because of the backbone and leadership provided by the uringi team. We heard Rosie speaking as one of the first navigators and has now come back and working in a second location, is even the most experienced, and also Rochelle, one of the OGs of these navigators. They know the role, they know what they're doing, but they still rely on and trust the mentorship, the guidance that they provide that is provided by the coaches, and also the ability to connect with each other, to be connected of what's happening across Tairāwhiti. And so I think the program lead, our coaches are unsung heroes, actually, of this mahi, because they're the backbone. It just works, and then you see what's in front, and you see the beautiful data, dashboards, all the reports that are produced, and meanwhile the ones getting on with work are just getting on with it. So we found varying levels of buy-in to this from providers. I think everybody loves the concept of it, but not everybody is able to do what is needed to really embrace it. Some people sometimes, I think, are a little bit scared about doing things so very differently. And we found a correlation between those kaiuringi not being part of coaching, not being part of the network, and a lack of confidence then in entering data and being committed to the way of working. Because as Rosie said earlier, it's easier to slip back in to your business as usual if you're not being constantly in touch with this is the way of working and these are the people doing this, and that you're part of something bigger. You're actually working together collectively to make change. And as Leslynne said, as people have categorically said, the goal is not to increase the numbers of kaiuringi. I have had providers say that they would do with more if they were available, but it's not the goal, because it's to socialise the way of working across Tairāwhiti. We want everybody working like this. We want all the contracts with providers who are able to work with those contracts, being consistent across those providers about how it rolls out. And we do that, we socialise that until the coaches are not needed, until the kaiuringi that we have are not needed. We are not there yet, but can hear all the different ways that the way of working is rolling itself out across Tairāwhiti, that we're definitely well on the way. So in terms of collective response and review, that's about, it shows us the experience of navigating the system of social service delivery was full of barriers. This is not news to anybody in this room. And so many policies rely on arbitrary criteria that really leads to whānau struggling within a labyrinth. I think someone said today, the washing machine of trying to get their needs met, and that without the help of a kaiuringi navigating them, it would be insurmountable. It is not possible to do it. However, the kaiuringi themselves are still encountering barriers, and they're having to do workarounds to get things happen. And of course we know this is yet another indication of a system that is well and truly badly designed, because it's not designed for us. It never was. And that's why we must help design the new thing that needs to replace it. So for the kaiuringi though, managing to work around barriers, failures and capacity problems in order to meet the whānau need, it doesn't only fail to change the system, it actually maintains it. It keeps it going. It says, okay, you've got your really bad thing here, I will do this, this and this to work around it. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. And then the next whānau just bangs up against the same problem. We say test and learn, test and learn. Is that barrier still there? Yes, 6 years later, still there. As Sarah Benjamin said today, doing wrong things righter is not good enough. We have to do better entirely. And so the system has to fundamentally change in order to really meet whānau need and also avoid a frustrated and burned out workforce. Change also has to flow from the bottom up. We've reinforced that from today, from the whānau voice that's captured. Through the escalation pathways embedded within Manaaki Tairāwhiti, to the agencies and the service providers, and ultimately to the Crown, who has system stewardship and needs to be accountable to its tiriti partner, which is iwi. They like to forget, they're trying to put stupid laws in place that makes it as if the treaty relationship never existed. The facts remain. The history exists. So Manaaki Tairāwhiti needs to clearly articulate their expectations of that accountability in order to really honour the trust that the whānau have shown them. The Crown needs to be accountable for its bureaucratic labyrinth, which is not only not meeting needs of whānau, it's actively causing harm to whānau. And this requires courageous leadership at all levels. The fourth pou is of the Tairāwhiti way of working is that whānau are flourishing, that we can see that. I loved the case studies that were given about saying these are things that are happening, and the people self-identify saying, my life is better because of this. I can get on with making my own life. I don't need a food parcel because I've got my benefit. I can buy my own food. It's a really, really low bar that we have set for our whānau. So today you've heard multiple examples of how the Tairāwhiti way of working works. The application of the method is having a profound effect on the lives of whānau in Tairāwhiti. The case studies we've done, the case studies presented here today, clearly show the impact that the way of working is having on the ground. Part of the success of the project, however, is also capturing the lived experience of whānau as they go through this journey with Manaaki Tairāwhiti. And so this provides an incredible resource, the groundbreaking resource that should be the impetus for transformative and system change. A direct focus on system change must be the logical outcome of capturing this whānau voice. In my research report, went to the board earlier this month, I had 6 recommendations, which I'll share with you. Number 1, that MSD devolve commissioning to Manaaki Tairāwhiti for all social services, mahi and te Tairāwhiti. That Manaaki Tairāwhiti produce Uringi 2.0, clearly funded by the government. The government invest in the backbone of Manaaki Tairāwhiti. That Manaaki Tairāwhiti consider the contracts of providers who are not delivering on the high trust model offered to them. That Manaaki Tairāwhiti approach local leaders to engage with system improvement coaches, so in order to learn how to adopt that Tairāwhiti way of working and making their organisations more effective. And finally, that Manaaki Tairāwhiti develop with its boards and other agencies a clearer pathway between Uringi reports of system failure and actions on those agencies' part to address those failures at local, regional and national level. So for the preliminary part of this report, we focused on what it actually takes to make the Tairāwhiti way of working work. The final stage of my work will be to focus on those barriers identified in Uringi. I'm very keen to hear how each agency responds to the thousands of data points about the barriers the agencies present to whānau. As Tony Fisher said earlier, each agency thinks they know how to fix their own problems. But how do they start if they don't know what the problems are? And why wouldn't every agency jump at the chance to replicate the highest social investment ever seen, as demonstrated by tangatarite? We know many things are decided in Wellington, and as Judy mentioned earlier, the Crown is definitely risk averse. They like to do things the way they know that they can measure. But I'm a strategist. I'd like to see each agency be accountable for checking out those barriers themselves. For clarifying what they can change here in Tairāwhiti, what needs to be changed through their regional office, and what's going to require ministerial approval or a law change. We cannot in good faith keep collecting data from our whānau and nothing changes. We heard today from some agencies, though, that are doing great, amazing things. We also heard from Rebecca McPhee about the prototypes in MSD and corrections that started. We're working awesomely, having great results, and then stopped and have not resumed. We have to stop blaming COVID for a lack of progress in Tairāwhiti. Finally, I was raised that this place is not only the centre of the universe, because it totally is, but that the whānau, hapu and iwi of te Tairāwhiti have the solutions for the issues that face us, that we have the leadership that is required to make that happen, and we see several examples of that in this room. In particular, I thank Leslynne for your quiet and humble leadership, because let's be honest, quiet and humble is not what we're known for here in Tairāwhiti. But in this case, it has proven to be the leadership we needed. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora huhu mai tātou katoa.